Okay, this is chapter 5, the integumentary system, or skin. When it comes to the skin, it consists of three major regions. You can see over here, I've got my epidermis, which is the outermost superficial region. Underneath that, we have the dermis, that's the middle region, that's the thick one. And then below that, we have the hypodermis, which is the deep or the superficial layer. Now, I'm going to start in the epidermis. So in this upper layer up here, this layer is composed of keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. Keratin is a protein that we find throughout our skin. Stratified squamous we had in chapter 4. Now, there are 4 distinct cell types and either 4 or 5 layers that we find in the epidermis. Let's do it that way. Okay, so here we are. When it comes to the cell types, first of all, we have keratinocytes. Now, keratinocytes are the ones that produce the fibrous keratin. And that's what's making up most of our cells. So there's my keratinocytes down there. So the majority of the cells, remember, we're just in the epidermis here, so that upper layer. Another cell that we find here are melanocytes. Melanocytes are usually down deep. So there's my melanocytes down here. They're producing melanin granules. This is producing the brown pigment that we have on our skin. My third one are my Langerhans cells. That's that blue-green cell right here. This is a macrophage. Macro is large, phage is eater, so this is the large eater. This helps activate the immune system. And then finally, we have the Merkel cell. That's the purple one down here. My Merkel cell is actually serves with the touch receptors, so with the sensory nerve endings. Now, when it comes to the layers, I said we had 4 cell types, so keratinocytes, melanocytes, Langerhans cells, and Merkel cells. But now when it comes to the layers, down here at the bottom, we have the stratum basale, or the basal layer. That's the deepest layer. Let's clear down here at the very bottom. This is the deepest epidermal layer that's then firmly attached to the dermis. Now, it consists of a single row of the youngest keratinocytes. Now, this is going to undergo rapid division. It's also known as the stratum germinatum, and that's why they're showing some mitosis going on down here. So this layer, this is where your new skin cells are being produced. Okay, let's move up one layer. If we move up, we go into the stratum spinosum. This contains a web-like system of intermediate filaments. We also find melanin granules and Langerhans cells. They're abundant in this this system, or this layer. So that's the stratum spinosum. You can see we have desmosomes. Those are what's connecting these cells together. So that's where we get that web-like system. Okay, my next layer going up is the stratum granulosum. And you can read over here that we have cytoplasm that's full of these granules. And so these granules then we release a set of lipids. That's important when it comes to your skin, because one of the things you learn about your skin is we're waterproof through the skin, that is, which is kind of cool. So having those fat globules released, that's going to become important here in a little bit. Okay, next layer up. Oh, we need to skip a layer. It's not showing here. If we're talking about the palms of your hand or your soles of your feet, you get the 5th layer right here between the stratum granulosum and the stratum corneum. It's called the stratum lucidum, or in other words, the clear layer. This is a thin, transparent band. It's superficial to the stratum granulosum. Now, it consists of just a few rows of flat, dead keratinocytes, but it's only present in thick skin, and they look a little different under the microscope. It's in, again, just the palms of your hand and the soles of your feet, so that's why we don't spend a lot of time on that one. Okay, the top layer. This is, oh, I'm sorry, my stuff's moving in on me there. This is the stratum corneum. The stratum corneum, this is the outermost layer of keratinized cells. This accounts for 3/4 of the epidural thickness. I know it doesn't show on this because the stratum continues up, but this is the thick area. So remember I said before that we're waterproof. Well, that's this layer and this layer. So this is where we get the function of waterproofing. Now, these are just layers and layers of dead skin. So this is going to protect you from any sort of abrasion. So anytime you rub your hands together, rub your skin, you're losing these cells here in the stratum corneum because, again, they're just stratified squamous epithelium. So it's also there to help from penetrating. So if you've ever been poked or cut or something, it's really this layer that's preventing that from happening. So this layer really is there for to keep you from being attacked biologically, chemically, or physically. So any assaults on your body, it's your stratum corneum that's there to help and protect you. Okay, let's move down from the epidermis into the dermis. Actually, I'm going to go back to that first picture. So here we are down in the dermis down here. Okay, this is the second major skin region, contains strong, flexible connective tissue, a lot of areolar tissue. The cell types then, of course, are going to be fibroblasts. And then they'll also find macrophage, occasionally a mast cell. We'll talk more about those later, like white blood cells. We'll talk more about those later. There's two parts that make this layer up. We can break the dermis down into the papillary layer, which is up here. We see we have the dermal papillae. That's the little peg-like projections that you see right underneath the epidermis. And then once you get out of that, the rest of this is made up what's called the reticular layer. Now, the papillary layer, this is areolar connective tissue with collagen and elastic fibers. You got the peg-like projections. These are called dermal papillae, but these don't have anything to do with your fingerprints. These really do have to do with capillary loops, and you can see that in my picture. There's capillary loops coming up. And Messner's corpuscles, and then free endings for nerve endings. So touch and other senses is what we're getting out of that, okay? Now, the reticular layer, this accounts for 80% of the thickness of your skin itself. A lot of collagen fibers added to this layer to add strength and resiliency to your skin. And then elastic fibers going to provide that stretch and recoil properties. As you can see from this picture, we have all sorts of things embedded in there. We've got a series of glands. So here's one gland here. This is an eccrine sweat gland. I do not have a picture of an apocrine sweat gland in here. I apologize for that. Anyway, we have a sebaceous gland. Sebaceous glands are associated with hair follicles, and we'll come back and spend some time on the hair in just a minute. So anyway, you have a lot of things embedded in this layer. So let's go on down real quick, and then we'll come back and spend some time on each of these parts. To the hypodermis. The hypodermis is also the subcutaneous layer. So if you've ever gone in for a TB test, that's a subcutaneous. That's the layer of fat that's right underneath your dermis. And so this is all adipose and then areolar connective tissue. Okay, before we go any further into hair and glands, quickly I want to talk about, we said before that the melanocytes are up here. When it comes to skin color, you actually have 3 pigments that play a role that contribute to skin color. Obviously melanin. Now melanin can be anywhere from give you a yellow to a reddish brown to a black pigment. And this is responsible for darker skin colors. So freckles, pigmented moles, that's just a result from the local accumulations of melanin. So darker skin colors, it's because of melanin accumulation. If you see areas of skin that are yellow to orange pigments, so that's more obvious, say like in the palms of your hands and the soles of your feet, that's from carotene. If you think about that, what's in carrots, that's that orange yellow pigment. Anyway, my third pigment is hemoglobin. So when it comes to the reddish hues or reddish pigments, that's where hemoglobin comes into play. Okay, now I can move on to my glands. There we go. I have several glands that you need to know. They're different ones. They prevent the body from either overheating. That would be your sweat glands. You also have glands that secrete cerumen. and that's in your inner ear canal, so you can probably figure out what that's all about. Come back to that. And then milk glands, and they're actually mammary glands, but to produce milk. But anyway, first, as far as sweat goes, we have the eccrine sweat glands. They're found in the palms and the soles of your feet, and then across your forehead. And you can see this is a cross section of my eccrine sweat gland, and there's the picture of it and where it's at. Now, the one that we don't have here, and I wish I had a model to show you, and maybe I do somewhere, it's called an apocrine sweat gland, A-P-O-C-R-I-N-E. Apocrine sweat glands are found in the axillary and the anogenital areas. And again, these are a sweat gland, so they're producing, they're there for a cooling mechanism. Okay. My next one down that you can see here, it's right there, there's my sebaceous gland. Sebaceous glands are found all over the body. They release oils. So they secrete an oil secretion. It's actually called sebum, S-E-B-U-M. And that's there to soften your skin, particularly when it's stimulated with hormones. So the more hormones you have, the more often these come into play. If you do a research study on acne, you need to learn about sebaceous glands. And I'm going to jump back again to this picture. I just like this picture better. But when these become clogged, we end up with bacteria down there. So that's how you end up with acne, is because your sebaceous glands. Now, my other two glands that I don't have pictures here as well, but ceruminous glands, I said before, these are modified epicrine glands in the external ear canal that secrete cerumen, earwax. And earwax is there to trap dirt, but it's also plays a role in deterrence of insects. You have to check me on that. I think I'm right. Anyway, so that's the ceruminous gland. And then, of course, mammary glands. Mammary glands are actually specialized sweat glands that do secrete milk. So now we can move into hair. There's a good hair follicle for you. Now, hair is a filamentous strand of dead keratinized cells produced by the hair follicles. And you saw my follicles before. That's what this whole area down here is. It contains a hard keratin. It's tougher and more durable than the soft keratin that you find in your skin. Different parts, let's see if I can find a better picture. Yeah, there we go. Different parts of the hair, you have the hair shaft, and that's what projects from the skin. And then you've got the root that's embedded down here into your dermis. When it comes to the hair itself, look, you've actually got a core called a medulla. So there's my medulla of the hair there. And anytime you have a medulla, you're probably going to have a cortex. So my cortex here is then the outer rind of my hair. So by the way, this is just the hair that we're looking at. The rest of this is part of the root. This picture doesn't show up, but this one does. Look down here at the bottom in the root. Those are melanocytes. So when it comes to hair color, it has to do with these cells down at the bottom. And you can tell from my silver hair, my melanocytes are no longer functioning like they used to. Anyway, that's the majority of the hair. Functions include helping to maintain warmth, alert your body to the presence of insects on the skin, and then also guard the scalp against any physical trauma, heat loss, and then also protect you from the sunlight. Hair is distributed over the entire skin surface, except you don't find hair like on the palms of your hand or the soles of your feet, and also on your lips. Nipples and portions of external genitalia don't contain hair. So when it comes to the follicle here, there's a lot of parts to it, but I typically don't go over a lot of this. There's the sheath that extends from the epidermis surface down into the dermis, and I typically don't hold people to that, or the root of the hair bulb. Something I do find interesting, though, and it's not on this picture. Let's go back to that very first picture I had. Look at this. We have hair follicle receptors. So in other words, we have nerves that surround the hair bulb. So any bending of this hair is going to stimulate these nerve endings, and that's how you know that something is touching you. So they're working as a sensitive touch receptor. Okay, there are different types of hair. You have vellus hair. That's the pale, fine body hair that's found on children, and then females have that. And then we have terminal, which is coarse or long, dark hair that you find of your eyebrows, your scalp, your axillary, and your pubic regions. We have hair thinning and baldness. We have alopecia, which is hair thinning in both sexes. And then we have true or frank baldness. Now that's typically genetically determined and it's sex influenced. So sorry, male pattern baldness falls underneath that. And that is caused by the follicular response to a specific hormone by a gene, but don't hold me to that because I'm not exactly sure how that works. Last part for this video, nail structure. When it comes to your fingernails. Your fingernails are just scale-like modifications of the epidermis, but they're on the distal dorsal surface of your fingernails and toes. I'm not going to hold you to the cuticle or the body of the nail or the nail bed or anything to it, as long as you know that the fingernail is still part of the epidermis, then you know everything that you need to know for this class. I'm going to end this video right now because it's getting too long.